For more, let's bring in former National Security Council Chief of Staff Alex Gray, along with Foundation for Defense of Democracy's Executive Director Jonathan Schanzer. Welcome to you both. Alex, I start with you. The president said this next period, up until 8 p.m. tomorrow night, is absolutely critical. You're watching how things are unfolding. What do you expect?
Look, I think that the president has gotten the Iranian regime into the position that a lot of us had hoped to, where they've seen these incredible regime degradations. They've seen much of their operational capacity, the capacity of their proxies, diminish to an extent that many of us would probably never have imagined just a couple of months ago. And now the Iranians, as the president has said repeatedly, they have this opportunity to come to the table and to make a deal, or he is going, in my estimation, to finish the job and to completely eviscerate what operational capacity and capability remains. I think that whatever course ends up happening, the president has already accomplished a tremendous amount. Just look at the metrics he set when this started, and he has already accomplished most of those metrics. So hopefully Iran does make a deal, as the president said, but regardless, this has been the most extraordinary show of American military capability since at least the Persian Gulf War, if not longer.
Jonathan, I want to come to you next to kind of assess further for us what this next phase could look like. You know, we heard President Trump say the next phase could bring more military tactics, power plants, infrastructure could be in the crosshairs next. We just played the sound from the Democrats who are saying that could be tantamount to war crimes. But we're also hearing from other nations in the region encouraging us, don't stop, finish the job. And President Trump also underscoring the Iranian civilians. He says in his words, they want to hear the bombs dropping because they know that the job is being pursued. What do you make of that, both accounts?
Sure. Look, the first thing I think we all have to recognize here is that Donald Trump is doing what he has been doing all along. He has maintained maximum flexibility. He can continue to negotiate. He can extend the deadlines. He can bomb them back to the Stone Age. He can continue to do what he's doing now. He can go into the Strait of Hormuz. He has left all of his options on the table, and the regime doesn't know how to read them. By the way, nor do his adversaries here in Washington. I think everybody's confused by what he wants to do next, and I think that's really the point. When we look at the infrastructure question, the Israelis actually have started to attack some of that infrastructure already. They took out 2 major petrochemical plants just over the last 24, 48 hours. They've knocked out $20 billion worth of revenue in just 2 operations. That will pale in comparison to what Donald Trump is threatening. It is remarkable that the rest of the region is cheering this on. It's remarkable that the Iranian people are cheering this on because they're the ones who have to rebuild the country when this is all said and done. Donald Trump knows this. He's going to try to preserve what he can, but he also is fighting for a win.
I want to move on to this, fellas. Democrat Senator Tim Kaine pleading with President Trump, please tone down the rhetoric against the brutal Iranian dictatorship. Listen.
And this is why the president and Secretary Hegseth's rhetoric about no mercy, no quarter, death from above, bomb you to the Stone Ages, this kind of rhetoric is really dangerous. I doubt the president will, but please dial back the rhetoric because you don't need to put people like these pilots more at risk by the rhetoric that you use.
Alex, does he have a point that rhetoric could create more problems for service members who get caught behind enemy lines, or are they overblowing how bad this rhetoric is toward terrorists?
Yeah, this is absolutely absurd. Senator Kaine has become a cartoon version of himself with comments like this. The Iranians have been chanting death to America since 1979. They're going to go after our assets. They're going to go after our bases, our pilots, our airmen, our crew members. They're going to go after every American military and civilian target that they can, as they have been doing since the Iraq War, when they maimed countless thousands and killed countless thousands of Americans with the explosively formed penetrators that they funneled into Iraq. Anyone who thinks that Donald Trump's rhetoric is the issue here is seriously afflicted with some very acute Trump derangement syndrome.
Yeah, Jonathan, I want to kind of highlight also what we heard Representative Ro Khanna also said in our intro here, because he said that what we need now is more statesmanship like President Obama, Jonathan, which really crossed me as strange, because couldn't you argue it was President Obama that kind of added to the problem that we had now? It kind of empowered or legitimized Iran to continue to pursue nuclear weapons through that so-called nuclear weapon deal. What were your thoughts about that comment?
Yeah, I mean, look, first, I think let's understand that Donald Trump is engaging with negotiations with the regime. That is diplomacy, right? He is trying to get them to say yes, but he's trying to get them to say yes on America's terms. What Barack Obama did during the 2013 and 2015 nuclear deals, he was actually sending pallets of cash to the Islamic Republic. I don't see that as diplomacy. I see that as capitulation. And ultimately, he wound up with an agreement that gave Iran hundreds of billions of dollars in sanctions relief. And yes, that is exactly what enabled the regime to continue on with its nuclear program. It's what enabled them to build all these missiles and rockets and drones that they have been firing at our Gulf allies and the Israelis around the region. And that's exactly what actually even enabled them to shoot down that plane. So I don't see Barack Obama's approach as having been successful in the least. I think that this is probably having the right impact. The Iranian regime is scared right now. They're nervous, and that's exactly what they should be when they're looking down the barrel of American might.
Jonathan Schanzer, Alex Gray, we appreciate your expertise. Thanks for being with us tonight.
Thank you both.